All right. We're live. Welcome, everybody. Whoever's tuning in from everywhere across the world, it's going to be a magnificent day because we're going to hear the next edition of Elon Musk's plans for making life multiplanetary. He did this about a year and a month or so, April 6th, I believe, last year, 2024. We're still waiting for the live stream to begin. And we'll cut to it as soon as we get an indication that Elon time isn't a lot more delayed than usual. Okay, so as Scott Walter, mechanical and aerospace engineer and two-time founder of robot companies, and of course, Gustav Anderson, the man, the machine from Sweden. Welcome, both of you. It's great to catch up for this live watch party, if only the party were to begin. But while we wait, how about let's just discuss what each of your expectations is for what perhaps Elon is going to reveal to us today.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a Debbie Downer for this. I think they're sadly these like company updates of SpaceX have been quite similar the last few years. There hasn't been too much news. I mean, it's always exciting to hear the optimism, but it's quite similar talk to what he's had before. I have a little bit of more expectations this year. He gotten some inclination or some hints at X that he's going to focus more on how we're actually going to go to Mars with how things are progressing. So maybe we have a chance at the 2026 window of reaching. But yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I think that part of the reason for the delay is that SpaceX is a very busy company, and they just launched another Falcon 9 a few minutes ago. And it could be the delay is just sort of waiting for that live stream to end so you can come into this one. And again, it's like, I'm not sure about you, Royden, but I'm coming to you using one of the Starlink dishes that, they're constantly launching up there. So this is a constant reminder of
how cool is that?
How much progress has gone from, they couldn't even get into orbit, maybe 15 years ago or something like that, little startup, to having largest constellation ever. And then what are they? 80, if it wasn't for China, SpaceX would probably be like 99% of all launches every year.
Master orbit, correct?
Yes,
correct.
exactly.
Master
orbit.
90
yeah, even then they're like 80, 90%. So
yeah.
they're a lot up there. And it's not like China's a slouch either. If you look at the mass they're putting up compared to historically a lot of other countries, they're doing quite a bit. So that says a lot. And of course, we're looking today for IFT-9 later this evening. Fingers crossed that they are able to finally get to orbit and maybe put a couple of those mass simulators up there so that we know that the next generation of Starlink will be even more impressive, because they have just started to allow you to do text to the Starlink, going down the cell, not obviously great bandwidth or anything like that, but it's about anywhere in the world you could potentially get an emergency text out there. Now, it may not be that like it's full-time coverage all the time. You'll try and you won't get a satellite for maybe a couple minutes, then you get one, but just the idea that they're there. And the next generation pretty much means like all the suckers who bought like the mini, thinking that, we're just going to have connectivity wherever, it's like anyone with a cell phone in their pocket in 2 or 3 years right now will have connectivity. And how crazy is that? But today's talk is not supposed to be about the Starlink constellation, but is supposed to be about making life interplanetary, which I think is a little bit different than the past couple of years title. I don't think it was so much that. Wasn't it more like company update, where we're going, where we're progressing. So it might mean they're more focused on the title, but I do agree with Gustav that the past couple of ones have been basically replaying the greatest hits. It's like, we've heard all that. And what I'm going to be looking for today is who is the audience that Elon is addressing? Is he addressing the employees? Is he addressing the investors? Is he investing space enthusiasts? Or is he really trying to address a much broader spectrum of people? Because there's certainly a lot of skepticism, So think about it, Kennedy had to persuade a nation to get behind the idea of going to the moon. Elon doesn't have to do that. He just has to sort of persuade the investors and everyone behind this harebrained scheme of his of going to Mars and how they're going to fund it. So is he going to be focused more on that? Or is it really looking at is that, no, we want to make this more of a worldwide kind of thing. There's a lot of challenges, and how do you do that? And the way you address that is very, very different on how you lay out the vision. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. Is he preaching to the choir? He doesn't have to convince us that for sure. It's a cool idea, but there's definitely a lot of people who are going to say, why do we have to do that? Don't we have enough problems here on Earth?
Yeah. And I mean, he's always said that SpaceX was kind of like the transport system. They're not really focusing too much on the habitation and on site sourcing and so on. Just to continue my downer point of view, it seems that he posted a few minutes ago that the talk will be after flight number 9. So
a
few hours early. So Elon posted the talk is postponed until after flight 9 launch tonight. So
we're too early. So that's going to be much later.
Yeah. I think
so. Well, which is interesting.
I think it says 8:15. Hang on.
Yeah, we'll check Elon's post. He just
8:15 would be after. I think the launch is at 8:15 Eastern time. Or
it's at 8:15 my time. Sorry. So that's that's it. It was scheduled. We were scheduled to go live at 7:55 p.m. my time. That's 12:55 Eastern time. And now it's 1:15 ET, so that it should be a few minutes from now.
Yeah, but check Elon's Twitter. He
just kicked it down the road a little bit to after, which
the flight is in 5 hours or something, or
and depending on how well that goes, if
it's in a few weeks,
if it goes really well, then it's kind of a victory speech. If there's another issue, then there's going to be that distraction. It's like you're going to have to address what were the issues there. So maybe maybe they're very upbeat on how successful they expect this to be. So they really think this will be
clearly
more of a. Part of it is a rally the troops, which is what last year was. He was talking about how the factory is coming online and how everyone out here is going to be a part of it. And it's not that you necessarily have to rally the troops, because I think they're all pretty motivated, because what more exciting company could there be to work on?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the space industry, where would you go?
Yeah. Where would, I mean, that's but it doesn't hurt every now and then to kind of have the reminder of where's going on. Usually you only need to rally the troops when things aren't looking very good. And certainly a year ago, I don't think there was any issues about the direction. Now, there's obviously been some setbacks here, in that the progress they wish would be a lot further along now, but those last two major setbacks. But I don't think it's one of those things that it's like the country is teetering on the edge right now because of it. It's just like, we were a bit too aggressive on some of our updates or upgrades that we thought were really going to make it better. And turns out those upgrades maybe didn't work out quite the way. I know that they talked about a lot of different things. The overall feeling I've had is that part of it could have been harmonics that were being generated that you don't discover when the tank is full. And then once the tank starts to get empty, you end up getting these harmonics that are coming in, vibrations on the downcomers, because they had made modifications that seemed like really, great ideas to improve overall efficiency, but it then introduced another variable, which is always a problem whenever you're iterating the design. If you make way too many design changes at once, you're not sure which is the one is now the culprit, because you somehow introduce some other impact. And because it happened twice and around the same time, it seemed like, they're connected. And hopefully they figured out exactly what they have to do to eliminate that in this case. So it's a shame that they lost those two vehicles, but again, they're all about, iterate as quickly as that's how you figure these things out. It's better that they figured out now than that those launches were like going really great and they were just getting away by the narrowest of margins. And then suddenly it crops up later on. When you're doing something that's really serious. So it's better the problems happen now than later.
For sure. But it's interesting. Sorry, Gustav.
Yeah, this report that they just posted about why things went bad last time.
Yeah,
I just skimmed it, but did they kind of state what the adaptations will be this time, or are they keeping that under wraps?
Let me just
Yeah, not really. Even then, just sort of what I was able to skim on. It's like they're not really saying exactly what the problem is. It sort of happened in some areas, and there was a little bit of issues, and we've addressed them. But it didn't seem like it was the detailed engineering report that you'd hope to know exactly what it was. But a lot of the speculation, and I think it kind of confirms a bit of it, was just the upgrades that they made in that had unforeseen ramifications, and now they're addressing those issues, which is common. And I see it all the time in software. I'll make a bunch of changes to my code thinking that all of them are innocuous, and then something goes bad, and then you think it's related to something else, and then eventually you have to do that thing like, let's do the rollback, because remember, everything was working until we made this change. Okay, are these two events related? And then a lot of times those two events are related, and then you have to go and investigate a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull up the update of that they sent out. Let me just add this to the screen. There we go. This is from the 22nd of May. This is what they said. If you can view this. Hang on. Contact with Starship was lost prior to triggering any destruct rules for its autonomous flight safety system, which was fully healthy when communication was lost. It is expected that the autonomous flight safety system fired upon loss.
Probably. That's what it's supposed to do.
Vehicle break up following the mishap. Vehicle was observed to re-enter the atmosphere, break apart. So then it goes on to say SpaceX led the investigation efforts with oversight from the FAA and participation from NASA. The National Transportation and Safety Board, NHTSA, and the U.S. Space Force. A mishap report was submitted to the FAA, and this is the interesting part. The most probable root cause for the loss of Starship was identified as a hardware failure in one of the upper stages center Raptor engines that resulted in inadvertent propellant mixing and ignition. Explain this to us, Scott.
Okay, see that we're not surprised that there was a Raptor engine that failed, but doesn't mean that, like, was that really the root cause, that Raptor engine just misbehaved twice in a row, or was it resulting in something else, and that is the fuel lines coming into the Raptor engines? And that might make sense that it was the one in the center, because that might have been where the downcomers are most exposed, or where maybe most of the vibration would be focused. So that's where that detail is kind of missing. Was it a plumbing issue coming on into the Raptor engine, or was it somehow the Raptor engine itself and like inadvertent mixing? that sounds like a leak to me. It's like around there that ended up causing it. So again, it didn't go to the original hypotheses a lot of people had, confirming whether that was the case. But many of the observers that were looking at it had a feeling it was the changes that they made to improve. I think they were using vacuum insulation and a few other things in there that would have improved the overall efficiency, but structurally may have introduced something that they weren't expecting. And again, a full tank versus an empty tank, the dynamics are very different. So, with a milk jug, when the milk jug is full, that jar is like really solid, right? And when it's empty, then suddenly it's like, it's a little bit, able to compress a little bit easier. You've got all these different changes that are happening. And so you have to test that entire regime. And it was probably a little bit tricky, a little bit harder for them to do it on the ground, because I don't think they ever really did a full length test on the ground until now. They've done that a few times to be able to identify what could be the cause.
Yeah, so what they say is, let me just pull it up again. So they're saying that to address the issue on upcoming flights, engines on the Starship's upper stage will receive additional preload on key joints, a new nitrogen purge system, and improvements to the propellant drain system. Future upgrades to Starship will introduce the Raptor 3 engine which will include additional reliability improvements
Mhm.
to address the failure mechanism.
Yeah, and that's quite possible too. Remember that they're flying with the Raptor 2s, which it's just because they have like a warehouse full of them, they may as well use them up. And that, you know, the Raptor 3s are going to be the future. And again, that's going to introduce a completely new variable. Just because we've had all these successful flights, when you put it in there, you have to go through and verify them. But in many ways, the expectation is that they will be much better because fewer joints. And there's just logically, it makes sense. If you build something that has got fewer joints, that's fewer gaskets are going to fail, you know, fewer bolts that are going to fail, you know, the flanges, there's all these other things. But it doesn't mean you may not introduce something else that you hadn't anticipated. There's always that possibility. But overall, it just seems like, yeah, that's going to be a way more robust design. And the expectation is that in some cases, you may be trying to fix a problem that's been already designed away. Hopefully, you know, it's like whatever that was, and that it wasn't really something else that is still part of the upcoming design.
But the interesting thing is, I think it's Booster 9 that's being reused for the first time. So this is the first successful reuse or planned successful reuse of a booster, which is massive, which goes so far to prove the reusability of this vehicle.
Yeah. Now, my understanding is they are reusing like 29 of the 33 Raptors. So, you know, but the booster itself is going to be completely reused. They are not bringing it back to the tower. And for, I guess, a couple reasons is like they really want to make sure that a reused booster is safe enough to bring back. So they're going to do what they did with the first boosters before they brought them back, is land them in the water to make sure it goes through. But my understanding is that they're not just throwing it away. There's a bunch of tests they want to run on it for robustness. It sounds like they're intentionally going to have some engine outs on the way down. And one of them is to lose one of the inner engines and then have one of them on one of the outer rings.
One of the inner 12, you mean?
Yeah. So I think, I think one of them was like maybe the cluster 3 that's in there. If they were to somehow lose one of those, to then have a relight on one of those, there was something about that that they,
because those 3 just kick in right at the very end, right, to gimbal it into.
And I think all 3 do, don't they? It's not 2. I think they use all 3 to come down there to bring it in. But you know what happens, because they've been able to compensate if one of the outer rings fails. That's like not a big deal. Now they're like, well, the worst case scenario is what happens if we lose something in the middle? Can we compensate very quickly? So they're going to test that and then, you know, then slam it into water. Now, I assume they may be doing the boost back prototype. It wasn't clear to me whether they were going to be turning around and bringing it back just off the coast, or whether they were going to let it kind of ballistically go back over. Because remember, you get the hot staging. So there was something about them wanting to focus more on getting to orbit and worrying less about what we were able to do with the booster. But I think they still have to test the hot staging. I'm not sure if it's a fair test to like say, well, we're not going to do this really complicated staging methods here. Just
using it.
But if that's what they're going to be using in the future. So I assume they're still doing the hot staging, and I assume they're still doing a boost back, just not all the way.
Something about the angle of attack as well, or when they
there was something about the higher angle of attack to be able. That's right. They were going to test that to see how much more downrange capability they can get on that. And I think part of the angle of attack was twofold, maybe downrange, and also they're hoping to see whether they could use that to slow it down more. So they may
something about just
not require as much propellant in order to land. So there could be that, but so they're not wasting they're not wasting an opportunity, because a lot of times if you know you're going to throw something away, so wait a minute, let's throw in a bunch of destructive tests that will be really cool since we're going to lose it anyways, or potentially destructive tests, and get the data from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happens if one of those 3 Raptor engines, the ones that are responsible for gimbaling, is there kind of enough backup power in the other 2 if one goes offline, or do they? I mean, what do you think the
there should be? There should be
able to gimbal on the 3 axis adequately.
Okay. the current configuration, yes, I believe that the inner ring, they all have gimbal capability. So what you're testing is a bunch of things. And I don't know if they are just going to randomly pick one of the engines to go out, and then the control systems are going to have to discover, oh my God, this just went out, not when I expected, and then quickly decide which engines to fire up. So part of the test is going to be, can you relight quick enough? When it's coming down, I'm sure the other two are going to have to compensate, because now the vector control has been is no longer pointing in the direction that you want, now that you've got some compromise in that. So it's probably have to quickly come over to make sure it's sort of stable, even if you're not getting the thrust that you want. And then you got to remember that the other one that's lighting up is completely off axis. So the whole control system now has to figure out, whoa, I don't have this normal, very symmetric arrangement of these. Do I take one engine online, offline? I think they can gimbal, but my understanding, the future design, they may not, but I think the future design is now going to have 5 in the center and not 3.
Oh, really? Okay.
Which means
so that
you would have
a lot more redundancy.
Yeah, that would be, so more thrust, more redundancy, and overall reduction in mass, because now that inner ring no longer has to have the gimbling. So your plumbing is a lot more simpler.
Right.
But you don't necessarily need, I mean, especially when you get, what's that inner ring? At least 10, and the outer ring is 13 or more. You know, what is the numbers that you're going, or even more than that?
Yeah.
The fact that you have so many, just with differential thrust, you can get a lot of control authority that way. You don't need to gimbal them around. And so the overall control strategy is going to be testing that. It's like, what happens? I get an engine over here and then 2 in the middle that are kind of doing this. How do I coordinate those 2 to be able to bring it down? And I'm sure they've got that all worked out. You know, it's like they've done plenty of simulations. They've kind of worked it out. Now they just want to see how this works in reality. And again, I think to be a fair test, it might be like almost like a double blind kind of thing. You know, we know what's going to happen, but we don't know which engine it's going to happen to and when it's going to happen. And there's going to be some guy just sitting over there that's going to just say that between this time and that time here, whenever you feel like it, just push some random button here and boom. And now let's just see how the overall system behaves at that point.
Also, do you think the 3 Raptors right now that are gimbling in the center, are they at full thrust, full throttle when they're kicked on?
I think they're pretty close. I think they're pretty. I'm not sure if they have enough excess there that if one of them went out, whether the other 2 would be able to kind of take over in the last instances to be able to really bring it in. So they've probably worked out a lot of it, but it might be there at 80% or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. But certainly they need that outer ring coming down to decelerate.
Yeah.
And once you get it pretty slow, it may be that those 3 have more than an adequate thrust to be able to not only bring it down, but to kind of also go in the reverse direction if they needed to. So It may be that there's enough. And sometimes those engines, you can also, go beyond their maximum for short periods. They could probably go to 110% or something like that if they needed to.
But for a very brief while, yeah. By the way,
brief while.
What we
the shuttle used to launch, I think, at 110%. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
Rated thrust and then the actual thrust.
Yeah. So that we just saw, this is a compilation that SpaceX put out on X, but that's static fire, and this is the 3 Raptors. I think this was one of the longest that they've done, for almost a minute, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've pretty much tried to get all the issues sorted on the ground as much as they can. Of course, you have test flights for the very purpose of testing it out in the environment that it's supposed to, occupy as it goes through the flight profile. But how much do you think they would have learned from last time and then implemented through this entire process, the static fire? How confident do you think, and what do you think would have given them the confidence to go ahead? Because, evidently they're very confident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've done a lot of testing, and I guess evidently they did also a lot of testing in their facility in McGregor to verify whatever the issues were. They instrument these things like crazy. so that they get the data. So remember, and all these, the payload was data. And if the payload is data, that means you better have that thing instrumented to get all the information that you want. And I'm sure they had more than enough that many cases they probably knew within minutes afterwards what the likely cause was. And then you just had to go through and prove it. And now, if that was obviously the case, it seems like they would have fixed it the first time. so maybe they learned something on the first time on what they had to do to make sure they get the proper data set. And it's been actually a pretty long time, because if you think about the last two launches were very close together.
Yeah.
And now it's been a much longer time frame here.
Yeah.
And it's not because they weren't getting approval from the FAA or anything like that. If they wanted to say we're ready to go a month after the last one, I'm sure they would have got the clearance for it. But they were probably like, okay, we we're not going to get any better results. We better really nail it. And usually there had been rumors of when flight dates were, and I was shocked by how aggressive some of those dates were. And then they actually came to pass. Like, it was the one in January ended up being, I think, about a week or so sooner than most people expected. And even then, the original one that was given, people just said, "There's no way they can hit that timeline," and boom, they did. So even people who were within SpaceX were a bit surprised at how quickly they get the turnaround, because they just felt, there's all this other stuff we have to do. So now this time, because it's a lot longer, I think they're pretty confident. And I hadn't heard any speculation of like it's going to happen on this particular day 6 weeks ago. It was like we're still not sure. We're targeting before June, and that was about the best that you're getting. Of course, everyone wants to know because
everyone wants to go down.
They want to go down there, and they want to know when they need to book the ROM. And I remember seeing back in December when Felix Schlong, he had right after one of his videos, which I think was just almost like days after the previous launch, and he already had that date for January, and I was like, that's nuts. There's no way. It's like, first, where'd you get it from? So I don't, who are your sources? I wouldn't check your.
You can never accuse SpaceX of not wanting to fail fast.
And it turned out that, his source was right on. So that was like a shocker to me that so soon after that one, they already had a target date that was very aggressive, and they came really close to getting to that target date. So, the fact that this one has been the opposite tells me that, they're pretty confident, and they want to make sure they don't lose this one. They really want to make, because they missed out on so much test data on the other two that they want to say, well, what's it like actually throwing something into orbit up here? These test masses we have, and we really want to check out those tiles to find out what the heating is like.
Which is what I was going to ask you. But before that, just your thoughts about the turnaround times, because I think for Falcon, it took about a year and a couple of months for the first ever turnaround of the booster. But this is just a few months, barely 3 months or so, for the Starship booster turnaround, the first turnaround. That just goes to show how much they've learned from their entire evolution of both vehicles, and just how confident they are.
And part of it is also the amount of risk that was involved. Is that I'm pretty sure they had paying customers at that time. So first, you didn't have that super compressed schedule that you were launching 3 times a week. It was like, we were launching just a couple times a month. It was already a pretty good pace, and we really want to check it out. And we have all these other boosters to set up here, and we have people that are paying money, and none of them wants to be the guinea pig. And so until they got to a situation that they could actually say, all right, we're going to light one of these things and actually see that it works, and then people got confident, and then it starts to change. And now you don't have that concern. It's like, well, we're our own customer. It would be a shame if something happened and then we lost yet a third Starship vehicle without getting all the test data we want. But at some point, we've got to find out whether these how you certify these boosters for reflight and whether they actually work.
Yeah. So let's just talk about the heat shield for a bit, because do you think they worked out all the chinks?
It's a lot of the upgrades they made sounded pretty good, because I have to go back and they haven't fully tested them. The main problem was like around the flap areas that they had some concern there. And
the hinges,
it
right?
seems like they beefed it up and changed things enough there that should be pretty good. It looks like they may have got around to issues of the tiles falling off. I think they had already kind of solved that. So it's doing a much better job of not losing tiles in launch. And it seems like it's doing a pretty good job of protecting the overall structure. And then we'll find out from the missing tiles exactly what the heating regime is like underneath. So I think they'll have it. There's, the big question is not going to be, do these tiles work once? The question is, what's the turnaround like? That when you launch this 3 or 4 times, you start losing tiles all of a sudden on the 3rd or 4th one, because it's just been so many vibrations and so many cycles it's been going through. And, whether you ever get down the ablator, but I think overall the tile should be good enough to allow this to really, and I mean, they basically already proved they kind of limped on in, but they had it. And the question is, the booster in good enough shape to ever be, or not the boost, the Starship, whether it's in good enough shape that you would want to fly it a second time because of, whatever damage could be happening to hinges. I don't think that's going to be the final design for the heat tiles. It's going to evolve in the next couple of years. I think it'll get better. There's, as we've spoken with Dr. Ed Pope, he's has some ideas of different kinds of materials that they're using, what is like almost 50, 60-year-old kind of research and technologies. It's not that much different than when we went into the shuttle, and we learned a lot of lessons about how that was not necessarily the best approach. That, I'm looking forward to seeing some more modern materials coming in, especially if that would reduce the mass, because that thing is heavy. Oh yeah, this is the block upgrade. So they also changed the flap positions a little bit to get them out of the hottest part of the airflow coming around. So those are nice tweaks, but still, I think we all want to see this new magic material, this unobtainium or whatever that allows you to create just this remarkable heat shielding that is, very little mass and is really tough. They're not here, but I'm sure that there will be something like that coming in a few years. That'll be much better.
Yeah. Sorry, Gustav, you were saying something.
No, I was just thinking they keep on changing the design, and I get a little bit sad whenever you see the cut-throughs, and the payload area seems to shrink every time. It's like the tanks get a bit bigger and the header tank gets bigger. So I often wish they would like add a small human every time they send it up, so you just get a feel for.
So you get an idea, yeah.
What was it, Starman who went up in his Tesla?
Yeah, and I'm not sure why it seems like they're increasing the size of the tanks because they want to put up heavier payloads. It's like, oh, you want heavier payloads, you just don't want bigger payloads, because the area seems to be getting smaller, but it seems like it's designed for.
But I think Elon also said that this is not the final. I mean, that Starship will get longer.
Yeah, even longer, which is hard to believe. It's
and there's always this 18-meter diameter design that he's been talking about. Now it's 9, and they want to kind of make it 18. It's like, then you can have a big hotel in there.
Yeah, that's now,
I mean, 9-meter diameter.
The interesting thing is that, remember, he made a post a few weeks ago, and people if you're an engineer or physicist, you understood exactly what he was talking about, but a lot of other people didn't realize at the time what was meant. I think he says something that the Starship puts out like 10% of the power of the U.S. electric grid. That's how powerful it is. It doesn't mean there's enough there to like run 10% of the country for a whole day. Basically it means it. And of course, the other thing, it doesn't mean that you're converting that directly to electricity. So obviously, if you were using that to spin turbines and everything else to power the grid, you'd be able to do it for how long does the first stage run? Like a minute and a half, something like that.
Explain kilowatt hours and what it
versus
for
kilowatt hours versus kilowatts. Okay, so he was talking about kilowatts, not kilowatt hours. So if you were to try to power the entire U.S. energy grid, 10% of it Well, you got to take that, and it's like, okay, you need 60 starships for like 1 hour. Multiply by another 24 for the whole day, just get 10%.
And then
but still, it's impressive when you do that. And there's like a lot of experiments that do that. I mean, you think of what goes on in Lawrence Livermore when they try to do some of those fusion tests. They have to store up a ton of energy because the amount of energy they release at that instant is like 100 times more or something like that than the entire U.S. grid get output. So basically, if they were to go straight off the grid without like charging batteries or supercapacitors or something like that, yeah, the whole grid would come down just to run these experiments at CERN or Lawrence Livermore or something like that. So we have these situations that you just can't produce enough at that time. So it's to give you an idea of how powerful that is. So just imagine that if Starship was electric and you plugged it into the grid, all our lights would be flashing. Basically what's going on and dimming, as that thing went up. So that's an impressive amount of power output when you think of it. And then if they're going to go to 18 meters, okay, so you got to understand this. People do a really bad job of describing how big something is. So when they say, Jupiter is like 100 times bigger than Earth, it's like, no, it's not. It's much bigger than that. What they're talking about is that the diameters of the two, if you compare them, but you got to remember, you got to cube that. Okay. So it's like 100 cubed when you get something like that. So if you're going to double the diameter of the Starship, assuming you're not even making it go up taller in scale, you're talking about it's like 4 times bigger already. So you double it, you're going to get a quadrupling overall in that. Then I'm assuming they're putting the size up. So that means right there, you're 16 times bigger already. And so that means you need 16 times everything. Absolutely everything. Methane, liquid oxygen, the nitrogen, just all that stuff. So when you start scaling it up, it gets pretty big pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I mean the internal volume at the moment is still very, very large, so you could house the international.
That's gonna also, yeah. So the same thing, you scale it up by that same amount.
Yeah, so by the time they're ready to kind of go full exodus to Mars with 100 people per ship, by then hopefully they have perhaps increased the diameter with 1 meter. But I mean, 100 people within that at the moment. Will be
but
crowded.
I mean, you can still go modular to a great extent, can't you? And a Starship is still capable of crazy amount of lift. So I don't know what's happening with the moon missions, but I guess that's something we'll get to know once.
The moon missions. I guess
Jared Isaacman being confirmed.
Yeah, I know. Didn't they already have his confirmation hearings and stuff like that? So it seems to me that they could have taken the vote. That's like the most slam dunk one of them all. It's like, he's an absolute shoo, and he's the right person for the job.
I guess the first few times you don't. I wonder how many people you would like to send. I mean, if you're going all the way to Mars, I guess a minimum a couple of people, but I guess you wouldn't want to risk sending more than a handful anyways, even if you've sent a few demo ships and some bots or whatever. But
my feeling is it's probably something like a half dozen. First, I think your crew has to be an even number, and there are reasons for that, and there are studies of having roommates and stuff like that. And usually odd numbers of roommates result in the most drama and stress because there's always like one person that's kind of left out. The group is like literally like the fifth wheel or something like that. And, it's one thing if you're just doing a mission to the moon, that's like a really short thing. It ever gets long, but you're talking about years and things may be joyous at the start. And then suddenly some conflicts come in there and someone just like feels like, oh, the other two are ganging up on me. So you don't want 3, you don't want 5. Then when I've looked at it, I think that the minimum you almost need is 6 because you need a certain amount of redundancy and you also need a certain skill sets. And I don't think that you can really cover all that. And the redundancy is like, maybe there's a ship's doctor, but there's going to be 2 other people that have a lot of medical training, even if they're not really a doctor. So you might have someone that's going there to be like, you know, a botanist or something like that, or someone who's a biologist, something to figure out how to grow the plant. Well, he's got a kind of a biology background. This person probably would not be a bad candidate to have some medical training. But then you're going to have some people who are geologists, and it's like, well, maybe the geologist is not suited to
be an orthopod,
to learn how to do like an emergency appendectomy or something like that. So you can see that, and then you probably have some people that are going to be more like some kind of ship's engineer or running equipment, and then you're going to have some sort of scientists. And I really think it is going to that these people are going to be exceptional people, and that they're going to be very skilled in more than one thing. So like the guy who's a geologist also is probably extremely skilled in something else. And you're probably going to have someone that's a pretty decent astronomer also of some sort, along. And so hopefully they have like maybe 2 or 3 skills and skill sets that complement themselves, that they can be quickly brought up to speed on other things. And when you look at all the things that would be needed to kind of get a station to run, I don't know how you do it with less than 6. And so the ideal might be a little bit higher than that. I mean, obviously Optimus would be able to help out on certain things. But the question is when it will have first? The skills that you really, really need for human, come on, let's hope Optimus isn't too good, because we need a reason to send people there.
Yeah, exactly.
The cry is going to be, it's like, don't send anyone. The bots can do everything. It's too dangerous to send people. It's like, no, we're not just going to go along to be tourists. So, and again, it's the mission objectives are the mission objectives to do like lots of science, to search for life and stuff like that, and then that's going to be a certain group of people you're going to send, versus like, we don't care about that. We just want to set up a colony. It's like, okay, you're going to set up a colony. You need someone to figure out where's the water, and how to get to the water, and so it's going to depend upon the mission objectives, and it could be that since you're not sending just one, do you send multiple ones? With different mission objectives, hoping one of them makes it. Because if you put all the crew on one starship, it's all your eggs are in one basket.
Well, that's exactly what we discussed. Like the last time around, I remember after last year's presentation, there's got to be redundancies built in. And let's say you send a power source to Mars. Scott, I think you're muted.
Yeah, we lost you there. Or... Oh.
Whoa. All good?
DDoSed. Something with the headphones.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking send. Why if you got the chips up and running, why don't you send like 4 of them? And if one messes up on the way, you can always do a in-flight transfer of your astronauts to the other one.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, you'd want to look at redundancies. I mean, when you're looking at astronauts who are going to be multitasking, as you guys were just talking about, you might as well also. I mean, and can you hear me?
Yeah. You pause for a while, but you're back.
Yep, we're back.
Okay,
so so let's say you set up a small modular nuclear reactor. You'd probably want to send a couple of them on different starships. Used to build in redundancies. Same with Optimi. Probably won't be able to send a legion up there, but definitely a few, maybe a 5 or something between 5 to 10, and spread them out over these starships. But there's an interesting.
I mean, if they get the bot to really function, you could really cram them in there. I mean, what do they weigh? 40 kilos or 50 kilos? So if you could,
and we've got Scott back.
Oh yeah.
Good.
Yeah, this is something that's been happening to the USB hub that my camera and mic go into. Every now and then starts failing, and it wasn't like a complete failure. I think my camera was still working, but something happened to my audio that so I'm getting that's why I had to pull them out, because I thought, like,
are your eardrums okay?
Yeah, exactly. And just really high pitched noise.
You're gonna have to upgrade your hardware if you're going to go to Mars and join us for these chats from Mars.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to find 3 more for us to go. I mean,
exactly. We need to find another.
Just the 3 of us.
Yep.
But even for the moon mission, I mean, they left the 3rd one up there when they went down, so they couldn't agree.
That's right. Exactly.
Like, just leave him and we'll go down.
Yeah. So yeah, the moon missions, they'll be interested to see what kind of architecture they want to pick them up.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly get your reaction to this, because this just popped up a couple of days back. China signs deal with Russia to build a power plant on the moon. China's been doing some amazing work on the moon, to be honest.
They have.
They've been plugging away. They've been doing a lot of resource exploration.
Their landers have been landing, and their landers have been working.
Yes, and working and hard at work, yes.
And everyone else seems to be having a hard time getting their landers to land.
Yeah. India, Japan. But what I just can't help think about the geopolitics of it all. And there was so much of talk about the Artemis Accords, of course led by America and NASA. I think we're seeing the emergence of a new axis now with this deal, would you say, between China and Russia, and then maybe a few more countries that sign on to the Chinese version of the Artemis Accords?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the big concern would be. First of all, they missed a chance there to potentially leaving the U.S. in the regolith. The U.S. will be having other partners going up there with Artemis as well, and a lot of the time these deals are just political posturing. There's always a question of how much comes through, whether anything is really accomplished. So we just have to sort of wait and see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, though. And I wonder if we go from a state where space is an opportunity to collaborate to a full-blown, all-out space race that has little collaboration. Although, I mean, if you look at history, America and Russia have collaborated even at the peak of the Cold War, so there's hope.
Mm-hmm.
But at the moment, is Russia an interesting partner? I mean, China is a lot more interesting when it comes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're the senior partner in this.
Yeah, exactly. I think the party that comes out of it best, I guess, is Russia. They get something. I don't think it's necessarily something that China needs. So there's no doubt about it that the Chinese space program is very mature and is coming along, and it's not something that you should dismiss at all. They're the only country right now that has their own space station. The ISS is shared by all these other countries.
Yeah.
And in some ways there's more modern, so it's going to be up there a lot longer. Yeah. And it's about a third of the size of the ISS right now, but it started out a lot smaller. It's getting bigger and bigger every day. And
also
they're getting to make some bigger boosters.
The way they've designed the Tiangong space station, because they've had so much to learn from the ISS. There's a lot of very modern modularity design that's gone into it.
Yeah,
and it's quite amazing. I think it's also a lot roomier for Chinese astronauts.
Yeah, I remember it's also fully manned too. So at first, the ISS was like every now and then we had people up there, but now it has been, I think, a permanent space presence for over 25 years. So, it's like my kids have never known a day where there wasn't a person in space, which is kind of a weird feeling when you start looking at it that way.
So what is is it just cost or interest that has stopped Elon from going to the moon earlier? I mean, Starship Heavy should be able to send a basic lander, and but isn't he interested enough? He just wants to go to Mars, or is there something else prohibiting him from, or them from, just sending something to the moon?
I guess it's just like there's this eagerness that the Mars is the bigger of the two prizes. It's obviously more challenging, and you see the argument going back and forth. Going to the moon's a distraction. It's a waste of time. We just go straight there. And others say it's absolute folly. Just test everything out there. If you can go to Mars, you can go to the moon as well. So why not go there, test out everything, and who knows? Maybe it's a better architecture to get to Mars from the moon. So there's no one that's really decided. I think he feels like he wants to get there sooner. That somehow you get there a few years sooner. And if you look at the original Artemis architecture, and hopefully they've got rid of this lunar gateway and all that. That was it was a jobs program. It seemed like it had nothing. And Robert Zubrin was always very vocal about what a bad idea it was. Like, you just got to go there and direct. Just building that thing is crazy. And so if you're looking at it that way, you just keep on saying, we'll never get there. We'll never get there with all these things. So everything from the SLS being overpriced, nothing really new or modern in it. It was just a works program, basically, throwing more and more money at it. And then you got to have the lunar gateway in there, which is also just kind of reducing and slowing the whole process down. So, I could understand why you would just say, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Because the more you have to do with it, the more you just get sidelined. And there's still a lot of interesting things to learn and know about the moon. But most people probably agree that the real scientific payload is in Mars. That we're either going to find out whether we're alone in the solar system or not. There's probably really, I think it's a very, very strong chance that we discover that microbial life either exists there or has in the past. There's just so many hints that kind of indicate.
Really, that's interesting. You think so? What are the odds?
Yeah. And it's not like me definitively saying that that's absolutely there, but there's been enough that, we know the famous Occam's razor kind of thing. And it seems like on Earth, whenever you discover something that's weird, Occam's razor says, oh, that's life.
Yeah.
But if the same phenomena happens in Mars, it's like, no, that can't be life. It was some other natural process that we don't know yet. So the standard is very, very high. And it's just been so many things that any one of them by itself is not enough. But it's like there's death by 1,000 cuts. It's like, oh, wait a minute, the cycling of the CO2 that's in there, some process time. There's definitely water here. The Voyager, the Viking experiments that they came up with, let's say, almost a Rube Goldberg kind of explanation on why it wasn't life. It's like, oh, okay, I guess you can do that, and I'll accept it. It's just like, so long as there's a way to say that it could be done by non-biological processes, you have to accept the fact that you haven't done it. And it seems to be the only way we're going to discover past life or current life on Mars is we have to go there, bring enough laboratory equipment, and it has to be people, and they have to be able to run the right tests, and they need to be able to bring microscopes and look at it. And even then, the moment we detect it, someone's going to say, "Oh, that was a hitchhiker from Earth."
Yeah, exactly.
It's contamination. So it's like it's going to be very, very hard. So they're going to have to go through a lot of things to be able to prove that whatever it is they discovered actually wasn't a hitchhiker from Earth, but was something which was native to the planet. And for me, and I think a lot of people, that's the reason we want to go to Mars. These grand ideas of putting colony there. It's like, yeah, sure, but that's going to be really hard. And I would probably name the very first colony on Mars Jamestown. And I think we all remember how that turned out. So I'm not so sure, that it's not going to be that easy. But if the idea is to go there and set up scientific bases as we do on Antarctica, then I think that's a much easier, more achievable goal, with the understanding that it's going to be very tough and potentially a one-way trip. intentionally one way.
Intentionally.
Yeah, and which doesn't mean it's a colony. What it means,
Yeah.
it's an outpost where people are willing to basically spend the rest of their lives there. And
Yeah.
hopefully, it doesn't mean that the lives are shortened. It just means that, we haven't figured out how to get you home, but we'll keep resupplying you and making sure you have everything you want, because we understand it's going to be very difficult to do it. And it may be a lot longer before you get self-sufficiency.
Yeah, I mean,
because,
I think people underestimate what it really means in the sort of timelines that we're talking about. When even if you look at Zubrin's timeline, it's, I mean, to really build a self-sustaining city on Mars, as Elon as well says, it's going to take decades.
Yeah. And terraforming is going to take a lot longer.
Yeah.
That's
So
going to take centuries. I mean, and we haven't even invented the technology yet to kind of reboot Mars, so to speak.
yeah, and it takes a while. And I've spoken about this before. Is that there's sort of three things that you need to be able to terraform Mars: energy, material, and time. And there's. And the thing is, everything's just going to, I mean, even on Earth, when we had plenty of energy and plenty of material, it took a lot of time for cyanobacteria to create the atmosphere that they were able to breathe today. It takes a lot of time. So if you want to accelerate that, if you want to reduce the amount of time, you need a lot of energy, a lot of, way more energy. And the other thing is like the material. What are you going to be producing these gases? Maybe you can produce them from the regolith. Maybe you do have material there.
Well, for one, you've got enough of water ice on Mars. I mean, and this is, I mean, the last visualization that we got from NASA. This is after the 2023 meteor impact around in the equatorial region, threw up massive chunks of water ice. Those are the white spots that you can see on this. And if you look at as the animation plays out, you'll see the entire map of where water is expected to be available in the form of water ice. There you go. So we first thought that ice was probably more available at the poles, but now it's clear that it's more widely distributed, and so that's really hopeful. So, we don't know what else the lunar regolith the Martian regolith is hiding up there. And as you rightly said, we're just gonna have to go down there and find out. There's no other way. I mean, we've tried to get the Mars sample return program going, but then that's also another issue that's stuck. But and with all these rovers getting stuck and small little pebbles getting into the mechanism, I see so much of hope for leaps and bounds and progress in science once you put a few optimi there, because there's so much that can be done in real time to fix things, to do in situ experimentation and research. I think it's going to be just phenomenal once we can get a few of optimi to Mars.
Yeah, as long as they get good enough and they can repair themselves and each other, but just send a few nukes and then you bring a few asteroids, ice, we call it big chunks of ice from the asteroid belt, and smash it into the planet, and we're halfway there.
Yeah. That's how Earth got its water, we believe. But again, that took a long time through orbital mechanics being able to do it. So it's in order to get a really short time scale, you're just going to need an incredible amount of material and just a phenomenal amount of energy, which is probably
so do you think that's
more than the sun is outputting?
Ergo, do we need to go up a level or up a stage in the Kardashev scale in order to kickstart Mars or reboot Mars?
I think you have to reboot Mars from Mars itself. I just don't think there's enough. You can bring enough material from Earth. So hopefully, a lot of the volatiles you need may already be locked up in the water ices or the regolith, that you can produce it there. That you don't have to start bringing in asteroids, because if you have to do that, then your time scales just go crazy. The one reason to want to drop a lot of asteroids on Mars is to bulk it up, give it a stronger gravitational field. And just thinking oh, okay, so we're really into planet building first before we're into this idea of terraforming. So would you want to create that? And then the other thing is, you need some sort of magnetosphere
to protect it from the solar wind.
Yeah.
I think some of the projections are that's like, well, we can build kind of an atmosphere there, and while we'll be losing some of it every year, we can produce more than we would lose for a while. So we don't need to necessarily have a magnetosphere, but at some point you're going to want to have that. So yeah, these are projects that will be centuries long and maybe millennial long. And of course, 100 years from now, people are going to look back at this quote of mine and be laughing. Oh, he wasn't aware of this magic technology that we just came up with. That maybe be like in Star Trek. What was the Genesis bomb that Captain Kirk's old girlfriend had? That just set it off and boom, instantaneously, the Garden of Eden. So
I always thought that was a euphemism.
Yeah. So it's going to take a while. It doesn't mean you can't have nice enclosures that are going to be these wonderful botanical gardens that you would use in these outposts to be able to do real science. But it's going to be a
but
long
how do you
time.
protect them from? We talk about planetary defense here on Earth. How do you defend Mars?
From asteroids?
Yeah.
The same way you're going to have to build something like that to potentially identify and deflect any incoming asteroids.
Because in this graphical visualization from SpaceX, towards the end, they show this beautiful kind of a greenhouse setting. But if that's going to be on the surface, it's not going to last even if a small meteoroid gets in. So I
think there would be So you would need a thicker atmosphere. Yeah, you would. I think you wouldn't have. You're not going to put all your eggs in one basket and say everything is above ground. You're going to have a lot underground, but we don't really like living underground. We might say, it's okay to sleep, but we're going to want to spend most of our waking hours maybe in a more pleasant environment, and so that would be above ground, and you have multiple ones of them. And you can build those things to be pretty resistant to small impact and be able to self-repair. So I'm not that concerned. Short of a very, very big rock coming down and hitting it. And the atmosphere, I think, still does a fairly good job of screening out some of the smaller stuff. And if you thicken it, it might get a little bit better. But that's always a risk, and that's why you make sure you build multiple ones around there for redundancy.
Deep tunnels.
Yeah. Gustav, from a physiological point of view, what do you think are going to be the main challenges for astronauts on Mars?
So, I actually think the psychological aspect is going to be the toughest in the beginning, probably. There are few people who live in Antarctica their entire lives and are happy with it. You stay there for a short period and you know that you can come home. So and then of course there's always this question about childbirth and procreation, and will that work in lower gravity? Probably, but don't really know, I guess. And I think the whole muscle wasting and bone issue is something we can manage with physiotherapy and training and supplements in the long run. And then, of course, radiation is always the big question mark. Will people get cancer as soon as they're stepping on board a Starship? And
maybe we could do a little bit of CRISPR gene editing, borrow a few genes from those tardigrades.
Maybe. That's a good start of a science fiction series. No, but I think they're a little bit overblown, all of these concerns. Sure, you will probably shorten your lifespan and your bone density will go down, and there are some movies about children being born on Mars who can never return to Earth because they aren't adapted to it, and perhaps that will be the case for a while. But I'm pretty sure we can overcome a lot of those issues. I think it's the whole making a suitable habitat with getting with all the nutrients and food and supplies. I think that is a much bigger challenge, and getting all the stuff there in time. So my vision, if Optimus or another project is successful, is basically we send a few thousand bots there to work for a few years, and then we start sending humans to come to a finished hotel or whatever, where the tunnels are already dug. And I think that is it's
That would be
becoming
nice,
more
wouldn't it?
likely as well. I mean, it's
Just
not
have everything ready by the time you
Yeah.
arrive.
yeah,
I'm-
more or less.
Yeah, I'm also saying is that it may be the ultimate retirement community up there. Is that
50 plus.
that's basically the
You
way I
always
kind of-
wanted to be there.
Yeah, I mean, this is fanciful thinking that I came up when I was first seeing like these Mars Direct kind of missions. I always thought like it should be a one-way mission, because a lot of times the mission architecture to be able to come back makes things so complicated. It almost makes sure that you're going to have your problem on the way there.
Yeah.
And so if your focus is not coming back but successfully getting there, you can change your mission architecture. They're going to be more likely to succeed when you get there. And most of these missions, you're not going there for a day and turning around and coming back. The idea is that they're going to be at least being able to spend 18 months. And my feeling is if you can spend 18 months there, you can spend 18 years with resupply and everything else. The thing is, psychologically, what's the kind of person that you want to do that? There's a lot of them out there. They go to Antarctica every year. Okay, there are people who don't like people and love science and love the idea of the remote. Believe me, there's plenty of people that would be willing to do it.
But I mean,
And-
another planet. That's
Yeah, but there are the
another-
adventurers that would be able to
Every
do,
thousands
you know,
of people
obviously-
signing up.
the
Yeah,
frontier
they're
men and
actually-
women.
yeah, and the thing is a lot of these people it's not going to be people in their 20s that you're sending. It can be people much older, much more established that, let's say they don't really have any ties back on Earth that they have to worry about. They're not like, you send someone in their early 20s and suddenly they regret that they never had a family or this or that, or, and it's like, you don't want people that have regrets. You have people with like, we've done everything we want to do on Earth. Everything we did on Earth was for this moment, so we go ahead and do it. Our kids are grown up, or this or that. And there are plenty like that. And they would go there, and that's going to be where they're basically going to sunset. They're going to say, I'm here every day. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make a brand new discovery that no one's ever known in life. And how exciting would that be? Because for most people, you're lucky, if once in your lifetime you make some major discovery about something that you've been working a long time. So there would be plenty of people who would be willing to do that. So I'm saying it's like, the people who are older. So yeah, there's a cancer risk, but once you get in your 50s, there's a cancer risk anyway. So they're probably going to be, accepting that. So that's why I'm sort of seeing it as it could almost start out as kind of like the retirement community. People go there, they have a certain skill set, which is like really good for the exploration and doing the science that's up there. And then they don't come back.
Yeah. Your cancer risk increases, but the chance of getting tick-borne encephalitis goes down drastically.
Yeah, Lyme disease, you don't have to worry
You mean
about
that you
that.
know,
Yeah, exactly.
no poisonous snakes that we know of.
Mhm.
That we know of. That's the caveat. Yeah, but it'd be amazing. I mean, just fantastic. Meanwhile, there's good news on the Tesla front. The stock is on a bit of a tear. It's up almost about 6.8%, which is a good omen, I suppose. Hang on,
Yeah,
where did we go?
a few years back, it
Send
always
that
went
to
hand
screen.
in hand. It's not as obvious anymore. I mean,
Yeah,
I kind of remember when before Starship, whenever they had a successful Falcon, it felt like the Tesla bump followed along. But
got a
I'm not sure.
little bit of a boost. Yeah,
Yeah, or it
maybe
was
this is
just,
an anticipatory boost.
yeah, maybe. Or it's just the EU tolls and BYD having to cut their prices. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
But,
is it like 4
I'm-
hours out to the
Yeah,
to the
kind of.
launch?
Yeah, we'll have to break soon, but let's talk about Starlink, and we've discussed this in the past, Scott.
He's looking at
The
his
IPO.
retirement.
No. It's like this. No.
I will pull it up for you. There we go.
No. I just somehow in the past hour I managed to gain 1,000 followers, and I don't know why.
Oh, what did you do?
Roy, your channel has more pull than I thought.
Really?
Yeah. It's like either that or the bots have just decided that I am prime picking, and yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's probably why. Okay.
Yeah, it's probably something you did, not me.
No, I think it's actually something Chris Camillo did.
Okay, there you go. That explains.
First Herbert started it, and then him, and then it's just like, oh.
Get the
Yeah.
snowball running.
So before we wrap up, let's just talk about Starlink. Starlink for Mars. We've spoken about connectivity and how Starlink would really be a game changer for connectivity when we're talking about Earth to Mars missions and communicating in real time. So you need the communications network. You need that infrastructure in place. How soon do you think that they'll send a few Gen 3 along with the first few batches of Starships?
Gonna spit them out as they go, or
Yeah.
How many are they gonna produce? Yeah, let's wait and see what he has to say.
yeah, maybe that's something
You
they
know,
will
I mean,
discuss.
yeah, you got last year. You talked about the factory, and that's come a long way since then. In the past year, so they're really able to pump them out pretty quickly. The Raptor 3s, I think, will also be more powerful, more robust, and they'll be able to produce those also at probably a faster clip as well. So there should be a lot.
And by the time they get there, there will be a V4 or V5 version 5 coming up, probably. Do you think they will ever go into? And I hardly knew about it before, but this kind of space solar thing where you kind of make your solar array in low Earth orbit or even farther out, and then you just beam down the energy. You read about this? It's apparently.
Yeah. Those have been around for a long time. I just don't know.
I mean, now that we have a quite cheap lift, it should be more feasible to get the kind of.
It should be.
I
think solar orbit really only makes sense for the AI farms that you want to put up there. That by the time you collect that energy and you figure out how to beam it back down to Earth and then convert it back to electricity, it's almost the same as if you just set up the solar panels on Earth. It's really hard to see the huge advantage, plus the potential disadvantage that you're microwaving anything that flies through there. So it's not clear that and you need also like a huge area. And it's like, we want to do it because we don't want to waste all this land for solar. And it's like, well, you're going to have all this huge area that you need to be able to collect the electricity in the first place, and that's getting beamed down. And I don't say that, well, we'll just beam it down into some really remote part of the Earth. It's like, okay, great. Now what do you do with it? How do you distribute it from there? So the distribution is going to have to be all over the place. Just like the reason we have power stations all over the place is for transmission reasons. So I don't see that. However, it does make huge sense to me from the standpoint AI that what are they talking about? Almost needing to double the energy, the electrical output of the U.S. just to keep up with what's needed for AI training. And AI training has problems with heat dissipation and all this other stuff. So it's like, maybe it makes more sense to do it in space.
Yeah.
So I think that's the real thing is find the energy intensive application in orbit, not down here.
Yeah. Compared to the US, I think China's adding a little over a terawatt hour a year.
Yeah.
That's or as much as America consumes in a year.
Yeah. And right now the solar generation is off the charts as far as it's starting to hit that real exponential curve that I think the energy forecasters are finally going to realize that, that thing we keep on thinking is actually a straight line has been the beginning of an exponential. And only now are we noticing it. So we're way ahead of where most forecasts said we would be as far as the deployed solar power. And it's something like, didn't it just solar outstrip nuclear last year for the first time?
What's his name? I always forget the guy who talks about the
Tony Seba.
Tony Ziba, exactly.
Yep,
In his recent book, didn't he kind of talk
Rethink
about
just
how,
brought out a report.
how AI will kind of speed up all of these? Sure, they need a lot more electricity and more batteries, but this tech will kind of speed up and make it easier for us to build these systems, hopefully. So it will feed into itself. But yeah, we need more, especially up here. We probably need a lot more nuclear. I mean, there are people putting up sunroofs here and there, or solar panels on the roofs, but we have to.
But I mean, you've all you have to do is learn from the example of the experience of Spain and Portugal and southern France.
Yeah, and Germany as well, I think.
And what that does to the grid. It's, I think, again, it's another Elon company, and another of Elon's products, which is the Megapack, that really balances out the grid. And then that's another. And then he just recently spoke about transformers. It was interesting. He said transformers for transformers for transformers. So transformers for the AI transformers to train Optimus, which is, well, as you all know from the Transformers movie, is named after a transformer. So transformers for transformers for transformers. That's the next bottleneck.
Yeah.
I suppose he's going to find a solution for that. And as we speak, I see SpaceX Starship is go for launch at about 5 hours and 7 minutes from now. So I guess, there's a little bit of a wait for that. And we'll have to see if that is on time. If all goes fine, it'll be about an hour and a half or two to track the return of Starship back to Earth, right, Scott?
Right.
And then only after that would we get to hear from Elon.
Yep. So we'll be staying up for that.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to go outside and see if I can see a streak go by. I'm not sure. I might be a little bit too far north to be able to see it, but it depends. If all goes well, I should not see anything.
Let's hope for that.
Like
We've
the
seen enough
last time,
streaks.
I guess I might see it. I wasn't around to kind of look down there the last two times, but I understand people not too far from me were able to record it on their phone. So
it wasn't just the Bahamas and
No, it was actually people in Central Florida, which really kind of surprised me. Miami, I mean, all kinds of places that were able to pick it up. I didn't think they'd be able to see it, but no, they were able to see this integration. Because it's still going to be light here.
Yeah.
We may or may not be able to see it because I can see the launches from the Cape 150 miles away from here at night because it's a very long orange tail because kerosene burns that way. It burns very dirty, so you can go ahead and see it. But the Starship with the methane, it's going to just be a bright dot at best. You're not going to see very much. And if the sun's still up, it's going to be hard and it's going to be low on the horizon. So I'm not sure I'll see anything, but I'll try my best.
Yeah, sadly, it's both too far north and too bright at night here. It will be in the middle of the night here, but it will be almost the same light as it is at the moment. So
yeah, and you are definitely too far north. I mean, like, if you're going to see it, it would be something very low. Yeah, I don't think so. No, because it's only going to be 150 miles high at the most, or 150 kilometers. So
maybe if they make a
this
really
is suborbital, right?
calculation, and it will go.
Yeah, I think it's still technically suborbital.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think that's a good note to end on. Thank you both, Scott and Gustav. It's been great to chat with you. A bit disappointing because Elon's time and timeline have kind of extended yet again. So Elon, time for the win.
Yeah, exactly. So,
don't want it any other way.
Fingers crossed.
Well, fingers crossed. Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much, and we catch you soon.
Yep. You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.